and welcome to Literary Hype. I am Stephanie, your Literary Hype Woman, and today's author conversation is a fun one. Because by this little random journey, she is kind of me. If you saw my conversation with Megan Bannon, we both feel that we are very similar people, but Megan says that Amanda is also her, so therefore, I am Amanda? Who knows, but we had a good time. Today's author conversation features Amanda Sellet, who has written some YA books, and now she's writing in the adult romance space. Her newest book is called The Odds of Getting Even, and there's some shenanigans afoot. It is kind of a nod to an older movie, so if you know that older movie, you can pick up on the references. But if not, it's really enjoyable, and shenanigans. Strip poker shenanigans. So I'll let Amanda tell you all about it. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Amanda Sellet. Welcome to Literary Hype. It's so exciting to have you on to talk about your upcoming book, The Odds of Getting Even.
Thank you.
Before we get into talking about the book, we have to talk about your best friend. What is it like being best friends with Megan Bannon?
I mean, it's exactly what you would imagine. You know, you just think like, oh my gosh, like, could she possibly be as much of an up with people, like super cheerleader, you know, constantly supportive and just the wind beneath my wings and all of that. I mean, we have a constant text thread. She reads everything I write. She talks me off the ledge. I mean, it is honestly, it's just like one of the greatest gifts you can have is to have a writer bestie who totally gets like the hard parts of the job and is able to see the good in your writing, you know, when you feel like everything you're writing that day is like a steaming pile of horse pucky, to use like a lightly Western metaphor in keeping with the theme of this book.
So you and Megan are part of this epic writing community in Kansas City. So talk a little bit about what it's like to be part of such a super squad of local authors.
I think people are always surprised, you know. Well, first they're surprised that people live in Kansas. And, you know, I'm like, whoa, shocker. And we did not all get blown away, you know, by a tornado. And then they're surprised by how many writers there are. And we think of it as, you know, like a Casey Moe crowd. And I live in Lawrence, which is a college town and a university town, so maybe it's slightly less surprising there are that many writers there. And then we have the Kansas City contingent. But there are so many writers that when I go to the post office in town and I say I want to mail something media mail, the first question is, oh, are you one of those writers? I mean, it's just like everybody knows, you know? And it's like we have a great independent bookstore and, you know, we have book events and we get authors coming through town and like it all kind of like it feeds itself, you know, as a culture. And I'm not sure that I would be a published writer if I hadn't fallen in with that group, you know, shortly after moving to this part of the country, like about 15 years ago.
They are very motivational. And if they find out you dabble, they're like, come, we will lead you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's no question I've had. Like, I always remember when my very first young adult book sold, and I was in the process of like fielding offers from two different publishers, and it was just a constant series of texts and phone calls, and I also decided that would be a really good time to color my hair, so it was sort of just running in and out and like hoping that my hair wasn't going to fall off while I was attempting to text people for advice. Shout out to Natalie Parker and Tessa Gratton in particular for that.
They're really good at getting people together.
Yeah, they're very much community builders and, you know, kind of leaders of that movement and really believe in paying it forward and educating people, which, you know, I think all of us who have benefited from their advice over the years hope to be that for somebody else in the future, but I feel like I still don't know enough, you know, to give people that kind of advice, but someday. Hope springs eternal, maybe in my 60s.
Yeah, and we have them to thank for Sierra Simone and Julie Murphy, and therefore Christmas Notch.
Exactly, right?
So make friends as a writer. It's great time.
It is the best thing.
So your book that is about to come out is The Odds of Getting Even. So for anybody who has not seen this on social media or Goodreads, what is it about?
So The Odds of Getting Even is a retelling of the classic screwball comedy, The Lady Eve, starring Henry Fonda and Barbara Stanwyck. And in the original movie, Barbara Stanwyck is like part of a gang of basically hustlers and card sharks. And so they Henry Fonda, they meet him on a steamer, this very glamorous, like ocean liner, and he's coming back from months up in the Amazon studying snakes. So he is like the most eligible bachelor anywhere. He's super handsome, and he's the heir to this beer fortune. And so she sets out to woo him, and it is just like a movie full of amazing sexual tension, even though it's like an old black and white movie and nothing explicit happens. But man, the yearning, the scenes of him putting shoes on her, things like that. So I love that movie, and it is like ridiculous and romantic. And so this is my version of that, like in a contemporary setting. And instead of going on an ocean liner, they go on a little trip to South Dakota, where she thinks she's going to like kind of a Coachella style music festival, but it ends up being like sort of a hoedown. She has the wrong wardrobe.
Only one covered wagon.
Only one covered wagon, folks. It's glamping time. Yeah.
Which was thrown out during our Battle of the Tropes panel, which was so much fun. But what was the original spark for you in deciding that you wanted to retell this movie?
Gosh, I think, true confession, it's partly because when I saw this movie, I love old movies, and I have a master's degree in cinema studies from NYU, and I grew up watching old movies, and this one in particular, because in the time when I was actually growing up, Henry Fonda was still making movies. He was so old. My understanding of Henry Fonda was on Golden Pond, so you just look up pictures of that. He was a very old man. His granddaughter was starting her career, when I was growing up. I saw this movie and I was like, holy cow. This has got to be one of the most beautiful men ever. He is so hot. And so it was partly that. I was like, all right, I'm just going to write this movie where you have this incredibly beautiful man who is a total goofball and a hot science nerd.
We talked a little bit about the cover off camera, and so the cover that you have here is a little bit different than the cover that we were going to see in stores.
Yeah, Charlie, he got a glow up between this draft cover, which is on the advanced reader copies, and then you'll see on the final copies, I was like, we really need him to be more sort of Clark Kent with the glasses on, but you can still tell he's hot, as opposed to extremely nervous guy with a sweating issue. So it's sort of what we have going on there. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Oh, Clark Kent in the new Superman movie, it looks hotter than Superman. What's happening there?
Maybe our tastes have evolved. Maybe we're like, Superman, it's a little bit obvious, right? The Lycra, it leaves nothing to the imagination. I just want something that I can unpeel. I like to savor the mystery a little.
So this book has a great title, The Odds of Getting Even, which, as I've been talking about this book, people are like, I will read it based on that title alone. So talk a little bit about the title creation process.
Okay, so I love puns. It's a weakness, right? Some would say a sickness.
I think it might be a journalist thing because for teases.
I think maybe so, yeah. So I suggested 8 billion snake-based puns. Hiss and tell, hiss me baby, one more time, hiss and hers. I mean, it went on and on and on, right? And I was like, these are amazing. They're just going to die for these. And they're like, no thank you, no snakes. And so then I was like, all right, we have to riff on the Lady Eve. And so I was like, some enchanted Eve. And then we finally started working around to this one, which I love because it gets at the fact that they're two oddballs and there's a revenge plot and, there's kind of the poker thing and all of that. So there's sort of a gamesmanship and they're one-upping each other all the time. So yeah, we just felt like this was the funnest of the options aside from the snake puns.
And it kind of hints at the gambling side of things.
Yes, exactly. Love being the greatest gamble of all.
So there's a line very early on in this, so Jean's working at this resort or hotel, and she's talking about one of her coworkers, Pauline, loudly singing along, who's incapable of not singing along with the background music. What song are you incapable of not singing along with?
Oh, wow. I kind of thought maybe we were going to get to do walk-up songs for the panel today, the Battle of the Tropes panel, and I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And so for me, it's going to be something from the 80s. And it's a toss-up between Smooth Operator, Sade, and Betty Davis Eyes. And I will sing the lyrics wrong, whatever the song is. It really doesn't matter what it is.
That was about to be the next question, because Pauline does not correctly sing the lyrics. What's your favorite misheard song lyric?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Oh, there's so many. When I think of Betty Davis Eyes, I think about the fact that I really thought it was a disease for a long time. And then I think there's a line in that it's like her hair is Harlow gold, and I think it's like Jean Harlow, you know, the old-timey movie star, and I always saw that her hair is hot as gold. So I don't know, maybe the gold was burning, maybe it was molten. I'm not sure what was going on there.
This book is full of so much humor. So much. Like, just right off the bat, all kinds of giggly moments, including bare butt buttes. Who knows? Who's to say which it's supposed to be? So talk a little bit about crafting humor in your romance.
I love humor. I have a huge weakness for it. I mean, it's like to the point that sometimes I'll read a book that other people think is a sad book, and my main memory of it is like the one line that was really funny, you know, and so I'll recommend something to people, and they'll be like, wait, that was really sad. Like, people died, and I was like, yeah, but did you read that joke? Like, that was so good. And apparently that's not how other people read, where they're just sort of skimming, you know, it's like a whale, like all the water is going through those things and they're just getting like the plankton out of it or whatever. That for me is that. I'm like, plot, whatever, romance, I like that too, but it's mainly the jokes. And for me, the struggle is to pull back. And so revision is about culling jokes and to have not quite so many, because people need to breathe. Readers need to breathe, writers need to breathe, whatever. So yeah, I tend to maybe go a little too hard on it. But yeah, I always want to do like, you know, go door to door with my books and be like, listen, this is for people who like really silly stuff. You have to like a farce. You have to like things where it's ridiculous. It's not pretending to be realistic. It's just about like, okay, it starts at a place of absurdity and then it goes from there.
One of my favorite lines in the beginning is saying that someone is the equivalent of a pair of pleated khakis. What to you is a human who is the equivalent of a pair of pleated khakis?
I mean, it's a Chad, right? Like you're imagining this guy, you know, it's the guy, he's in the khakis, he's in the topsiders, he's in the golf shirt, and he has an extremely boring haircut, and yeah, he's not as good looking as he thinks he is. I worked at a dry cleaners in high school, so like I saw a lot of unfortunate men's pants, you know, like business casual, whatever, slightly before the era of Dockers. But still, I guess you could say like maybe I have a little chip on my shoulder. This is book therapy, right? This is how we get past all of these things that have, you know, we've suffered through in our youth.
We process trauma through reading and writing.
Yeah.
It is a thing that happens.
Yeah.
And there's some traumatic-ish meet cute for these two that leads to some fun times of poker. So are you a poker player, or did you have to research the poker for this book?
So my youngest brother does play poker, and so without telling him why I needed to know this, I would just ask him questions like, are there any mildly suggestive poker terms that you know off the top of your head? You're like, okay, that's weird. But he did send them to me, so that was good. In the same way that I get like video game information from my three brothers and things like that.
The siblings are useful sometimes, which is something that we have in common. You are the oldest of 5, I'm the oldest of 4, and we are both the shortest of all of our siblings.
So rude.
It's so rude.
It's like,
why does this always happen? Like, I feel like it's a very common thing for the oldest to be the shortest. Why? Why science?
well, in my case, according to my mother, it's because she ate a lot of Swanson's frozen chicken pot pies while she was pregnant with me. So I probably did not get the same quality nourishment that my siblings got, because after that, she went through her Laurel's Kitchen, like, vegetarian awakening and started, like, making her own pasta and yogurt and bread and stuff like that. So they're all, like, you know, prime physical specimens, and I'm just, like, the Gollum of the family. It's so tragic.
It's so rude.
Yeah. And now my daughter is 6 feet tall, so I am once again the shortest in my household.
That's not even fair.
No, I know. When's my growth spurt coming? That's what I like to know.
Right, and we're not short.
No,
like for
you
women,
can't
we're
tell
not
because
short.
we're standing next to each other, but we are statuesque.
Just going back to the poker scene, there was a reference to Greco-Roman poker. If you were to make this into a real game, what rules would it be?
Well, clothing optional, obviously. And I feel like it would be funnier if people had to grease themselves in some way, you know, corn oil, whatever is like sanitary and it's not going to stain like the textiles in your living room. Yeah. That would be good.
So our main character, Jean, like, yes, she's working in a hotel, but she is an artist. And she has this line about not wanting to explain that she's an artist. And I feel like that's very common among writers of like, well, I want to be a writer. I'm not a writer yet. So talk a little bit about why we feel like we need to justify our craft.
It is hard, isn't it? You know, I remember when I had to apply for a new passport, and it was pretty easy when I worked at newspapers. I'd be like, oh, I'm a reporter, I'm a journalist, you know? And then when I stopped doing that and I started trying to write, there was this time when it's like, okay, but I don't have anything published yet, you know? And I'm close, but I'm not there yet. So am I a writer? You know, am I an author? Like, am I a novelist? I don't, you know, what do you call it? And then at one point I actually got pulled aside by airport security in Amsterdam, and they're like, so it says here that you're a writer, and I had to defend it. And I mean, they asked me a lot of questions. They're like, and where's your publisher, and where are they based? Is that in New York? And I was like, are you trying to trip me up? Like, is this some kind of, wait, do you think I'm a spy? Like, that would have been amazing, right? But I mean, what a cover.
That sounds like a whole new book.
Right? I know. And then I was like, but that sort of forced me to be like, okay, I have to take this on now and say it. But it is really hard, because how do you decide? Like, what's that line in the sand? It's like, is it when you have an agent? Is it when you have something under contract? Is it when you finish writing your first book? I don't know, you know?
I've heard some people who are very like, if it's not published, you're not a writer. I've heard people who are, if it's not traditionally published, then you're not an author. And then I've also heard, if you do any writing at all, you're a writer. So it's that, what does being a writer mean to you?
I feel a kinship with anybody who cares deeply about writing and is committed to the craft and learning how to do it better. And to me, that's a writer. And so if you're doing the best work that you're capable of doing, and you're constantly like striving to grow as a writer and to learn and to improve and to level up, then to me, you're a writer, you know? And that really is the heart of it, more than having a book published, more than selling a lot of books, more than like getting an award or a starred review or anything like that. Being a writer is the writing part that you do alone, like just you and your keyboard or your notebook or whatever. Is you and the story, you and your mind, you know, and the like twirling around in the recesses of your imagination, like coming up with plots and things like that.
So our main man, Charlie, he's like really into snakes. Like,
yes.
Really. So what was your research process in learning about snakes to be able to write his love effectively?
Right. Well, okay, you know, there are like historical novelists, and they get all these interlibrary loans, and they do all this research and stuff like that. I like to just ask people questions.
Wait, a reporter who likes to ask questions?
Yes, right? I know. I mean, and I love libraries, but I'd rather be reading fiction. So that's where my reading time goes. And so one of my daughter's best friends, who was in carpool with her at that time, is just a total snake lover and loves reptiles generally and amphibians and, you know, has lots of pets and all of that. So I would just casually, you know, when they would get in the car, I'd be like, so what would you say is a really common snake somebody might have as a pet that's harmless, not that scary, maybe even kind of cute? And what does that look like? And like, do you know the scientific name? No, I'll Google that. You know, so that was really my process, was like, oh, and then I got a few picture books finally out of the library that were for very young children about learning to understand snakes. And that was kind of embarrassing when people would walk by me at the big library tables and see me, you know, all about snakes, the big book of snakes. And I was like, listen, this is all I need. I just need to know how I can make a couple of sex jokes about snakes. That's like, for my purposes, that's perfect.
I love that that's the priority.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a romance.
Right.
Did you ever think about changing it up? Because the snakes were from the original movie, so did you toy with any other possible obsessions for Charlie?
I thought about it a little, and like the process of discernment was, can I write about snakes, or am I too scared? And I was like, okay, no, snakes I find I can handle. Spiders would have been an absolute no-go. That was not going to happen.
No one wants to look at pictures of spiders.
No. And then there'd be so many questions. Why? Why does he like spiders? I don't feel that as a romance. I don't know. So,
no,
yeah.
that feels more like a horror movie. It's like
Yeah.
the guy's obsessed with spiders. Like, you're going to die.
Yeah.
You're probably going to end up dead.
Yeah.
No.
And I mean, but when you do any retelling, it's like, what am I going to keep? And what's a fun Easter egg, you know, that'll be like, okay, this is like a fun little wink and a nod if you've seen it. And that was one that I thought, okay, that'll just be a little touch. I'll have snakes, I'll have beer, and I'll have this basic thing where she chases him back to his like family estate to get revenge on him for abandoning her.
And beer, we were going to do this in the beer area at Comic-Con, but it's not big enough for that, so that was sad. But we do have a great brewery here that is spreading out all over the place, Boulevard. What's your favorite kind of beer?
From Boulevard, I love Tank 7. That is absolutely my favorite. But that's like small quantities. Definitely don't have more than one of those. It's like a whole meal and a beverage in one, but that is delicious. Can confirm that Sierra Simone is also a fan, so that's something we have in common, in addition to being like Jane Eyre super fans.
Anything to be in common with Sierra.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, she's just so
I'm touching
cool.
glory right now.
She's just so cool. Another thing we both have in common is that you were a journalist as well. We both reached the double digits of years. So what did you learn from being a journalist that has helped you with writing fiction?
It's so interesting because I think everybody thinks like, oh yeah, it's such a natural transition. Like, you've been writing all the time. So I think, something that I share, like we both know Sarah Henning, right, who writes wonderful young adult novels, fantasy and contemporary, and she is also a journalist by trade. And we've talked about this. It is just the ability to do the work and to realize that you just have to show up and you have to keep doing the work, because it would be easy to get into your head and start to be just incredibly neurotic about it and just be like, like an 18th century pianist and faff around in your lace cuffs and be like, oh no, I couldn't possibly write today. I'm too overcome with existential dread. The ennui is preventing me. And it's like, nope, you just have to do it. It has to get done because there's always a deadline. And so you learn to grind when you have to grind. And so that is really good. But it did take a while to loosen up, I feel like, from journalism, where you are so focused on keeping it short, keeping it tight, keeping it focused, and keeping it truthful and accurate. And so letting yourself really be free, and playful and all of that, that takes more time to sort of thaw.
I feel like you just attacked every single problem I have while writing fiction. Just in one sentence, just like, boop, boop, boop.
It passes,
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
What do you wish you knew when you first started writing fiction that you know now?
I wish it hadn't taken me quite so long to realize that the main character really needs to be the center of the story. I think I went through a long phase of just thinking a plot is just a series of random occurrences that you slap on the page, to get from point A to point B. And, and they didn't, for me, often in early drafts and in early books, it was like, what does this have to do with the main character or her journey? Not a lot, okay? So, yeah, I think, and it's still something that, in successive drafts, it has to improve, right? It has to get tighter. You have to make the connections more intricate and intimate and more meaningful to the main character and have everything flow through them and around them and be because of them, as opposed to just they just happen to be in the same building at the same time when this random fire broke out.
People have a lot of strong feelings about craft books or craft resources. Is there any resources that helped you make the transition from nonfiction to fiction?
Probably the biggest thing for me was getting in critique groups and having critique partners. So it was more having the direct response from readers who were also writers so that you could see what was working in real time. Because craft books, I always get something out of them. I always enjoy them, but it's not the same as having someone look at what you're actually producing and say, this is what's working, this is what's not working, And so that was probably more powerful to me. And that's always my top recommendation to people. If you want to take a leap forward, you have to do that.
What is the best advice you've gotten from a critique partner that has helped you in your writing?
Okay, so this book, for example, it started, the whole first section was only from Jean's point of view, and we didn't hear from Charlie until you got about a third of the way into the story. And I thought, oh, that'll be so suspenseful. I can hide all of this information from the reader. The downside was then people didn't care about Charlie because they didn't know him, and they had no idea what he was thinking. He had no interiority. And so it was the one and only Megan Bannon who said, hey, I know you think this book is almost done, but guess what? You have to alternate POV chapters all through the first act. So you are going to have to write 10 new chapters before your deadline. Good luck.
And I'm sure it was very encouraging, you can do it.
You can totally do it.
I believe in you.
I say this with love. Can't wait to read it. Bye.
I'll see you in a couple days when you're done, right? Yeah.
I do think we were on a retreat, like a weekend retreat, and I do think I did write most of them in the course of that 3.5-day retreat.
See, it goes all back to writing friends are the best friends.
Yep.
Book friends are the best friends.
Totally.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Watch the movie The Lady Eve, see hot young Henry Fonda, and see how much sexual tension you can have, just with, a little anklet choreography.
Sounds good. And because this is Literary Hype, the last question we always ask is, what books are you hyped about?
Okay, this will be an obvious one. In July, everybody has to read The Undercutting of Rosie and Adam by Megan Bannon. This is the third book in the Tanry and Marshall series, and I have already read this book many times. And from the beginning, although I thought I would go to the mat as a Twyla and Frank stan forever, I love this book. It's beautiful. It's a major step forward. This is a true work of fantasy for the people who love that. The world building is exceptional, and it just brings the whole story home. So you have to read that. And I just read a book that came out a while ago, Margot's Got Money Troubles by Rufy Thorpe, and that blew my mind. It was just amazing writing. And the empathy for the characters was so incredible, and not at all what I was expecting. And so highly recommend.
Well, thanks so much for taking time to talk about your brand new book with Literary Hype.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to Amanda for joining me at Planet Comic-Con Kansas City in 2025 to discuss her book, The Odds of Getting Even, which is super fun. If you want to check it out for yourself, and I recommend you do, the links are down in the description for you. And by shopping using those links, you are supporting Literary Hype, so appreciate it if you do. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Literary Hype YouTube channel, and share it with a friend. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.